Alrighty, so this is Chapter 1, Section 5, Angle Relationships. Now, before we get started, we have some vocabulary to get out of the way. Okay, so adjacent angles. These are angles that have a common vertex and a common side. So angles 1 and 2 here, they have a common side right in the middle, and they have a common vertex there. Angles 3 and 4 have a common side and a common vertex. Next up, linear pair. A linear pair is a pair of adjacent angles with non-common sides that are opposite rays. Another way to think of that is adjacent angles that are on a straight line. So here are the opposite rays right here, or you can just think of it as a straight line with adjacent angles on it. That's a linear pair. Next we have vertical angles. Vertical angles, these are opposite angles that are formed by two intersecting lines. So, and it has to be exactly two intersecting lines. So when they cross, the angles that are formed that are opposite each other, they're vertical angles. The other interesting thing about vertical angles that you should know is that they are congruent. So the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 2. Likewise, angles 3 and 4 are also vertical angles, and they also are congruent. So these vertical angles, they are congruent, meaning they're equal. So if this, for example, was 45 degrees, this would be 45 degrees. If this was 50 degrees, this would be 50 degrees, and so forth. Next we have complementary angles. Complementary angles are two angles that have a sum of 90. It doesn't matter if the angles are touching each other or if they're separate. So they can be adjacent or they can just be separate angles. Also, take a look at this one. You're going to see this a lot in tests, quizzes, and in your book. This is a 90-degree angle. 90-degree angle, if you split it up into two angles like we did here, 1 and 2, you know that these have to add up to 90 degrees, so 1 and 2 are complementary angles. Next we have supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are two angles that have a sum of 180 degrees. So again, they don't have to be separate, but they have to be two angles. So here, 110, 70, we add them up, we get 180. These are supplementary angles. Here we have a straight line. Straight line is 180 degrees, so if we chop this straight line into two angles, those two angles have to be supplementary. So here's two practice problems that are pretty similar to what you'd see from this section. So for the first one, if A and B are complementary angles, and the measure of angle A is 50 degrees, what's the measure of angle B? Well, right away, when they say A and B are complementary angles, remember, complementary, that means the two angles have to add up to 90 degrees. So, that means the angle A, the measure of angle A, whatever that is, plus the measure of angle B, whatever that is, has to equal 90 degrees. Well, if we know that the measure of angle A is 50, then all we have to do is solve for the measure of angle B. Take away 50 from both sides, and we find that B equals 40 degrees. Next one, right here, these are vertical angles. Vertical angles, opposite angles formed by the intersection of two lines, and remember, vertical angles are congruent. That means this equals this. So to solve for x, 120 equals 2x minus 10. Add 10 to both sides, 130 equals 2x, divide both sides by 2, and we end up with x equals 65. Alrighty, if you can do those, you should be pretty set for this section.